Kingdom of Heaven arrived in theaters with grand ambitions, a sweeping epic about faith, war, and honor during the Crusades. But what audiences saw wasn't the film Ridley Scott intended to make. Studio Scissors carved out nearly an hour of footage, leaving character arcs incomplete and emotional beats hollow. Years later, when Scott's full vision was finally released, everything changed. The director's cut revealed a different movie entirely, one that transformed a misunderstood failure into a masterpiece. Today, we're storming the gates to uncover the truth. What really happened behind the walls of this cinematic Jerusalem, and why did it take years for the world to see the real story? Number 1. The director's cut was 50 minutes longer. When Kingdom of Heaven hit theaters in 2005, audiences watched a 144-minute film that felt rushed and incomplete. Characters appeared and vanished without explanation. Political intrigue seemed shallow, and emotional moments landed flat. Critics weren't kind, and the box office reflected their disappointment. But Ridley Scott had a different version locked away. His preferred roadshow cut ran 194 minutes, nearly an hour longer than what Fox released. The missing footage contained crucial scenes explaining Balian's internal journey, Baldwin's political genius, and the moral complexity that made the story worth telling. When the director's cut finally reached home video, it transformed the film's reputation overnight. What critics once dismissed as a hollow spectacle became recognized as one of the finest historical epics ever made, proof that studio interference can bury a masterpiece. Number 2. King Baldwin was a real hero. Behind the silver mask stood one of history's most remarkable rulers. Baldwin IV became King of Jerusalem at just 13 years old, already suffering from leprosy, a condition that would have destroyed most leaders. Instead, he became a brilliant strategist who kept fragile peace between faiths while his body slowly failed him. Edward Norton's haunting performance captured Baldwin's quiet strength and tragic nobility. Ridley Scott worked closely with historians to honor the real king's legacy, showing how he balanced diplomacy with decisive action. Despite constant pain and political enemies on all sides, Baldwin held his kingdom together through sheer force of will. The film softens some harsh realities, but Scott's portrayal respects the essence of a young man who refused to let illness define his reign. Norton brought dignity to a character who could have easily become a tragic caricature. Number 3. Orlando Bloom nearly turned it down. Fresh off playing Legolas in The Lord of the Rings, Orlando Bloom was exhausted. The thought of jumping straight into another massive epic, carrying the lead role this time, felt overwhelming. When Ridley Scott first offered him Balian, Bloom said no. Then he said no again. Scott wouldn't take no for an answer. He personally reached out multiple times, selling not the spectacle, but the emotional journey, a broken man finding purpose through sacrifice and moral courage. Scott convinced Bloom this wasn't another fantasy adventure, but a grounded story about faith, doubt, and choosing honor over glory. Eventually, Bloom reconsidered. Taking the role meant months of brutal training and physically demanding shoots in scorching deserts. The gamble paid off. Even critics of the theatrical cut praised Bloom's layered, understated performance. Number 4. Extra soldiers were real knights. Walk onto most Hollywood sets, and you'll find extras who learned their choreography that morning. Kingdom of Heaven was different. Ridley Scott filled his army with medieval reenactors, historical combat enthusiasts, and trained sword fighters who owned authentic period armor and had spent years mastering medieval warfare techniques. These weren't just background bodies filling space. Many could actually fight with real weapons, understood historical battle formations, and moved like warriors who'd spent lifetimes in armor. Their presence brought authenticity that no amount of CGI could replicate. The weight of movement, the clash of steel, the organized chaos of actual combat. Instead of carefully choreographed sequences, Scott could stage larger, more organic battles. The reenactors understood spacing and momentum, transforming battle scenes from Hollywood spectacle into something genuinely medieval. Number 5. The biggest lies in the movie. The real Balian of Ibelin never worked a forge in his life. He was born into nobility, a seasoned diplomat and military commander who inherited his title through bloodline, not through sweat and steel. Ridley Scott knew this, and changed it anyway. Scott deliberately transformed Balian from nobleman to blacksmith because he wanted audiences to connect with a working man thrust into history. A grieving craftsman finding purpose through unlikely heroism felt more compelling than another aristocrat doing aristocratic things. The change let Scott explore themes of class, faith, and earned nobility. But Scott didn't abandon history entirely. Major events like the Siege of Jerusalem, Baldwin's reign, and Saladin's character remain remarkably accurate. the film respects the political complexity of the era, showing both faiths as capable of nobility and cruelty. Scott bent the truth where it served his story, but honored it where it mattered most. Number 6. Morocco became medieval Jerusalem. The Holy City needed to rise from desert sand, and Morocco provided the canvas. Ridley Scott's production team transformed vast stretches of barren landscape into towering fortified walls, bustling medieval markets, and sloped battlements that stretched across the horizon. The scale was staggering, an entire functioning city built from scratch. The massive set became more than just a backdrop for filming. It was so meticulously constructed and historically detailed that it remained standing for years after production wrapped. Local officials recognized its value, and the structures became a lasting monument to the film's ambition and craftsmanship. Building medieval Jerusalem in Morocco wasn't just about saving money. The landscape, light, and climate matched the historical setting far better than any European location could. Scott needed authenticity in every stone, every shadow, every dust-covered alley, and Morocco delivered a Jerusalem that felt lived in, ancient, and real. Number 7. Scott and Fox battled over runtime. Every minute sliced from the theatrical release came from Fox executives, not Ridley Scott. The studio panicked over the runtime, convinced that a nearly 3-hour epic would limit screenings and kill profits. They demanded cuts, then demanded more, carving away character development and political nuance until Scott barely recognized his own film. Scott fought back, but studios hold the final say. Scenes explaining Sibila's devastating choices vanished. Balian's moral journey got compressed. The intricate web of political alliances that made the story compelling was reduced to simplified good versus evil conflicts. Every cut weakened the foundation Scott had carefully built. Years later, Scott didn't hide his bitterness. He openly stated that studio pressure gutted the emotional arc and stripped away the complexity that made the story worth telling. The battle between artist and corporation became as brutal as any siege in the film, and just as costly. Number 8. Edward Norton refused on-screen credit. Edward Norton made an unusual demand before accepting the role of King Baldwin. He wanted complete anonymity. No opening credits, no promotional materials, nothing that would connect his celebrity status to the masked, dying king. Norton believed Baldwin's power came from mystery, and attaching a famous name would shatter that illusion. The decision challenged Hollywood's obsession with star power. Studios build marketing campaigns around recognizable names, but Norton insisted the character existed beyond celebrity. He wanted audiences to see only Baldwin, not the actor behind the silver mask, performing for awards recognition. Norton's gamble created one of cinema's most haunting performances. Without the baggage of fame, viewers focused entirely on Baldwin's voice, his stillness, his quiet authority. The Masked King became iconic, precisely because audiences couldn't separate the man from the legend. Norton proved that sometimes the most powerful performance is the one where the actor completely disappears. Number 9. Sibila's full arc was cut. In Ridley Scott's original vision, Eva Green's Sibila faced heartbreaking choices that defined her character. She wasn't just a political figure caught between factions. She was a mother watching her son die, a sister grieving her brother, a woman whose personal tragedies shaped every decision. The director's cut revealed her complete emotional journey. The theatrical release stripped away nearly all of it. Studio executives cut the scenes, showing Sibila's devastating loss and the impossible moral decisions that followed. Without this context, she appeared cold, distant, and purely calculating. Green later said the cuts broke her heart. They removed everything that made Sibila human. When audiences finally saw the full version, Sibila transformed from a supporting character into one of the film's emotional anchors. Her scenes with Baldwin carried new weight, her choices gained tragic depth, and Green's performance finally made sense. The studio had taken a complex grieving woman and turned her into a political prop. Number 10. The final siege took 11 weeks. Filming the assault on Jerusalem became one of the most logistically complex sequences in modern cinema. Ridley Scott commanded 1,500 extras, multiple camera cranes, real pyrotechnics, and siege engines hurling actual flaming projectiles. The coordination required to capture medieval warfare at this scale pushed every department to their limits. 11 weeks of relentless shooting tested everyone's endurance. Extras worked in suffocating armor under brutal sun. Stunt coordinators orchestrated hundreds of simultaneous actions while managing real fire and falling debris. Camera operators struggled with dust clouds so thick they could barely see their equipment. Every day brought new challenges that threatened to derail production. Scott later called it one of the most physically brutal shoots of his career. The conditions were punishing, the technical demands exhausting, and the pressure to get it right overwhelming. But the final siege became the film's centerpiece, a visceral, chaotic battle that felt genuinely medieval in its scale and savagery. Number 11. Filming made the cast sick. The Moroccan desert offered stunning visuals but brutal working conditions. Between sweltering temperatures that regularly exceeded 110 degrees, contaminated water sources, and dense smoke from constant fire effects, the set became a health hazard. Crew members dropped from dehydration, and illness spread quickly through the production. Orlando Bloom and Liam Neeson both fell seriously ill during filming. The combination of physical exhaustion, heat exposure, and respiratory problems from smoke inhalation sent multiple cast members to medical tents. Some days, shooting had to pause entirely, while actors recovered enough to continue working in heavy armor. Despite the conditions, most cast members pushed through without complaint. They understood that authentic medieval warfare meant authentic medieval suffering. The misery translated to screen, the exhaustion in actors' faces, the genuine discomfort in their movements, the sweat and grime coating every scene. Audiences saw real physical toll, not movie star glamour. Number 12. The horses were trained for battle. Medieval cavalry warfare requires horses willing to charge into chaos, and Hollywood horses aren't typically trained for it. Kingdom of Heaven demanded something different. Experienced horse masters spent weeks preparing animals to handle conditions that would terrify normal film horses, charging past open flames, falling on command, and staying calm while carrying actors in 60-pound armor. The training process was exhaustive and expensive. Horses had to learn dozens of specific behaviors while managing the added weight and restricted movement their riders faced. Each horse essentially became a specialized performer, responding instantly to commands even when surrounded by smoke, shouting extras, and clashing steel. The result elevated every mounted combat scene. Instead of carefully controlled shots with obvious safety measures, Scott captured genuine cavalry charges with power and momentum. Their presence added weight and danger that CGI couldn't replicate. Audiences felt the thunder of hooves because it was real. Number 13. Scott wanted a bleaker ending. Ridley Scott's original ending offered no comfort. After Balian's surrender saves Jerusalem's people, the film jumped forward to show Richard the Lionheart arriving with fresh armies. Peace gives way to renewed violence, and the cycle of war continues. Civilians who survived one siege face another. Hope dies slowly, crushed under endless conflict. Studio executives rejected it immediately. They called the ending too emotionally relentless, too depressing for mainstream audiences who expected heroic resolution. They wanted uplift, not historical truth about how the Crusades continued for decades. Scott fought to keep his vision, but Fox held final cut on the theatrical release. The compromise satisfied nobody. The theatrical ending felt abrupt and incomplete. When viewers finally saw Scott's intended conclusion in the director's cut, it reframed the entire film. Not as a story about heroism winning the day, but about good people trying to find honor in an age of endless, senseless violence. Number 14. They lit real fires for the siege. The flames engulfing Jerusalem weren't created in post-production. They were genuine infernos of pitch and oil, hurled by functional siege engines built specifically for the film. Specialized pyrotechnic teams controlled massive fires that blazed across the fortifications, creating heat and smoke that cameras captured in terrifying detail. Safety coordinators worked around the clock, managing the controlled chaos. Between takes, teams extinguished fires, reset the pitch-soaked projectiles, and checked wind conditions. One miscalculation could have turned the entire set into an actual disaster, making every flaming shot a carefully managed risk. The decision to use practical fire effects added visceral intensity that digital flames can't match. Actors responded to real heat, real smoke, real danger crackling around them. The terror in extras' eyes wasn't acting. It was genuine reaction to working inside a controlled inferno. Scott got authenticity by literally setting his movie on fire. Number 15. The film sparked religious criticism. Before Kingdom of Heaven even reached theaters, religious groups on multiple sides voiced concerns. Some Christian organizations feared the film would portray Crusaders as barbaric invaders, while some Muslim groups worried it would reinforce negative stereotypes. Early script leaks suggested both faiths would be shown committing atrocities, and that made everyone nervous. Ridley Scott found himself caught between historical accuracy and cultural sensitivity. He wanted to show the Crusades' complexity, the nobility and brutality present in both forces. But in a post-9/11 world, any film touching religious conflict faced intense scrutiny. one wrong scene could spark international incidents. Eventually, Scott softened some dialogue and added clarifying moments to show that extremism, not faith itself, drove the violence. He emphasized characters like Saladin and Baldwin, who sought peace despite pressure from fanatics. The changes didn't satisfy everyone, but they helped the film avoid becoming a flashpoint for renewed conflict. Number 16. Helmets were historically accurate. The Crusader helmets worn throughout Kingdom of Heaven weren't Hollywood props pulled from a costume warehouse. They were precise replicas based on museum artifacts from the late 12th century, crafted to match the actual armor worn during the Siege of Jerusalem. Ridley Scott demanded historical accuracy, even when it made filming significantly harder. The authenticity came at a brutal cost for actors. The helmets offered severely limited visibility, forcing performers to navigate battle scenes nearly blind. The metal trapped heat in the Moroccan sun, turning each helmet into a suffocating oven. Neck strain became constant. Authentic medieval helmets weren't designed for comfort. Despite the misery, the helmets transformed the film's visual authenticity. Modern audiences can spot fake armor instantly, but these pieces looked and moved like genuine medieval war gear. Actors' restricted movement wasn't a performance choice. It was the real limitation Crusaders faced in battle, captured because Scott refused to compromise. Number 17. Neeson's mentor was invented for the film. Liam Neeson plays Godfrey of Ibelin, a weathered knight who teaches Balian about honor and sacrifice. It's a compelling role, beautifully performed, and completely fictional. The real Balian's father was named Barasan, a nobleman whose life bore little resemblance to Neeson's character. Ridley Scott created Godfrey to serve the story's emotional needs, not historical record. David Tholis's Hospitaller is another invention, a composite character blending multiple historical figures into one philosophical warrior priest. Scott needed characters who could articulate the film's themes about faith, loyalty, and the cost of war. Real history didn't provide the right people, so he crafted them. Scott wasn't hiding these changes. He openly acknowledged creating characters to explore loyalty and mentorship in a chaotic era. The invented figures served as moral anchors, giving Balian guides through his journey. Historical accuracy mattered to Scott, but only when it didn't interfere with telling a meaningful story. Number 18. Rewriting the score broke its mood. Harry Gregson Williams composed a haunting score for Kingdom of Heaven, music filled with mournful strings and distant choirs that emphasized loss, sacrifice, and the tragedy of endless war. Then test audiences complained it felt too heavy, and studio executives panicked. They demanded major rewrites to make the music more accessible and conventionally heroic. The theatrical release featured a compromised score that tried to please everyone and satisfied nobody. The original's somber undertones were brightened, complex themes were simplified, and the music lost much of its emotional power. What should have been a mournful requiem became generic epic orchestra. The director's cut restored Gregson Williams' original vision, bringing back the haunting undertones of loss and redemption that Scott intended. The music suddenly matched the film's themes, not triumphant heroism, but quiet dignity in impossible circumstances. The score's restoration proved that changing the music had changed the entire film's emotional resonance. Number 19. The Leper King's mask became iconic. The silver mask covering Baldwin's ravaged face became one of cinema's most memorable images. Designed to be both beautiful and unsettling, it transformed Edward Norton's king into a walking symbol. Hidden strength, concealed suffering, and the loneliness of power, all captured in one piece of metal. The mask told Baldwin's entire story, without words. The prop's impact extended far beyond the film. Within months of release, costume enthusiasts and medieval reenactors began creating replicas. Fan conventions filled with silver-masked Baldwins, each trying to capture that haunting combination of regality and tragedy. The mask became shorthand for the entire film's aesthetic. Years later, the mask remains Baldwin's defining feature, more recognizable than any actor's face could be. It represents everything the film did right: historical detail serving emotional truth, restraint creating power, and mystery generating lasting fascination. One prop became an enduring symbol that transcended the movie itself. Number 20. Filming stopped after a real riot. Production hit an unexpected crisis in Spain when a local protest over land use turned violent near the set. What began as peaceful demonstrations escalated quickly. Riot police arrived, tear gas filled the air, and suddenly, the film crew found themselves in actual danger, not the stage version they'd been filming for months. The entire production shut down immediately. Cast and crew sheltered in place while authorities worked to restore order outside. Nobody could leave safely, and filming became impossible with emergency services blocking roads. What should have been a quick delay stretched into nearly 2 weeks. The incident reminded everyone that making a film about war doesn't prepare you for the real thing. Staged battles with choreographed violence felt absurd compared to genuine chaos erupting outside. When filming finally resumed, the experience had given them uncomfortable perspective on the violence their characters supposedly lived through. Number 21. Deadly desert storms made the cut. The Moroccan desert delivered more than stunning backdrops. It threw genuine chaos at the production. Massive dust storms swept across filming locations with little warning, reducing visibility to near zero, and pelting cast and crew with sand traveling at dangerous speeds. What should have been controlled movie making became survival. Ridley Scott refused to waste the opportunity. While other directors might have called cut and waited for clear skies, Scott kept cameras rolling. He captured actors genuinely struggling against blinding wind, fighting battles they couldn't see, stumbling through conditions that no amount of direction could fake. The rawness was real. Some of the film's most visceral combat footage came directly from these unplanned storms. The chaos on screen wasn't choreographed. It was cast and crew improvising while nature attacked them. Audiences watching the siege scenes are actually witnessing people fighting a real desert storm, making every desperate movement and blinded swing completely authentic. Number 22. Weapons were hand-forged steel. The swords, shields, and lances used in Kingdom of Heaven didn't come from prop houses. They came from blacksmiths. Orlando Bloom specifically requested real steel weapons instead of lightweight aluminum fakes, understanding that authentic weight would change how he moved, fought, and carried himself as a medieval warrior. The decision made every fight scene significantly more demanding. Real medieval swords weigh several pounds, and swinging them repeatedly in full armor under desert heat pushed actors to their physical limits. But the authenticity showed. The weapons moved with genuine heft, creating realistic momentum and impact that aluminum props never could. Fight coordinators had to adjust their entire approach. Instead of fast, flashy choreography, possible with light props, they designed heavier, more deliberate combat that matched how armored knights actually fought. The steel weapons forced everyone to slow down and fight with real physics, creating battle scenes that felt earned rather than performed. Number 23. Bloom trained like a real knight. Orlando Bloom spent 8 months preparing for the role before filming began. His training wasn't typical Hollywood fight choreography. It was comprehensive medieval combat education. He worked with specialized fight choreographers to master authentic swordplay techniques, horseback combat, and the specific movement restrictions imposed by wearing full armor for hours. The intensive preparation paid off in ways few audiences noticed. Several of Bloom's on-screen duels were filmed as single continuous takes with no stunt double swap. Every swing, parry, and footwork adjustment came from Bloom himself, performing complex choreography while wearing heavy armor and managing a real steel sword. The commitment transformed his performance from actor pretending to fight into something approaching genuine warrior presence. Bloom moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent months learning actual medieval combat, not just memorizing staged sequences. His physicality sold Balian's transformation from blacksmith to defender of Jerusalem. Number 24. Backlash nearly ended Scott's career. The theatrical failure of Kingdom of Heaven devastated Ridley Scott personally and professionally. Critics savaged what they saw as a cold, empty spectacle. Box office returns fell short of expectations. Studio executives blamed Scott's vision for the failure, ignoring their own cuts that gutted the story. For the first time in decades, Scott questioned his future. The director seriously considered walking away from historical epics entirely. After pouring years into a film he believed in, only to watch studios destroy it and audiences reject the compromised version, continuing felt pointless. Why invest everything into ambitious projects if corporations would always prioritize runtime over substance? The director's cut changed everything. When Scott's full vision finally reached audiences through home video, critical reassessment was immediate and overwhelming. What was dismissed as a failure became celebrated as a masterpiece. The vindication convinced Scott to continue making ambitious historical films, but only with guaranteed creative control. Number 25. The real Balian wasn't a blacksmith. Balian of Ibelin was born into nobility, not poverty. He inherited his title legitimately, served as a seasoned diplomat and tactician, and never spent a day working a forge. Ridley Scott knew this historical truth intimately, and deliberately chose to ignore it because the film needed something more powerful than accuracy. Scott's fictional blacksmith-turned-knight allowed him to explore themes impossible with a nobleman protagonist. A working man thrust into history by circumstance, earning nobility through actions rather than birthright. struggling with faith while surrounded by religious certainty. These narrative elements required inventing a different Balian entirely. The change angered some historians, but served the story's deeper purpose. Scott wasn't making a documentary about the Third Crusade. He was exploring universal questions about honor, purpose, and whether one person can make moral choices in an immoral world. Historical Balian couldn't ask those questions. Scott's fictional blacksmith could. Kingdom of Heaven transformed from misunderstood failure to recognized masterpiece, but only after the real story was finally restored. The journey revealed hard truths about Hollywood's obsession with runtime over substance, the cost of studio interference, and what happens when artistic vision collides with corporate fear. Ridley Scott's battle to preserve his film proved as dramatic as any siege on screen, a director fighting executives, weather, illness, and his own doubts to create something meaningful. The cast endured brutal conditions, the crew built medieval cities and desert wastelands, and everyone involved pushed beyond what seemed possible. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden truths, hit like and subscribe. We've got more secrets from cinema's most ambitious films waiting for you. Have you watched the director's cut, and did it change how you felt about the movie? Tell us in the comments below.